So this is a short video to explore how Disney master animator Frank Thomas approached the animation of Baloo in The Jungle Book way back in 1968. And the animation was assigned to master animator Frank Thomas, and the voice talent was Phil Harris. And arguably the work that Frank and Ollie and Milt Kahl did on The Jungle Book is still some of the greatest character animation ever done. And here's the line. Baloo is saying to Mowgli, "Oh gee whiz, how did old Baggy Pants put it? He said." That's the line. And these are the thumbnails. These are taken from the Disney book The Illusion of Life, which was published back in the 1970s. Still in print today, and still one of the best books on studying animation, because it really set out for the first time the Disney method that had been carried out since the 1920s and 1930s, when the 9 Old Men first really figured out the 12 principles of animation. Now obviously when you're approaching a line of dialogue like this, the first thing any animator wants to do is really listen hard to the audio. So let's just listen to that first of all. So here's the line.
There's something I gotta tell you.
Tell me what, Baloo?
Gee whiz. Now, how did old Baggy put it?
So that's the line. Gee whiz, how did old Baggy put it? And you've got this great line of dialogue by a brilliant actor, but you, the animator, you've got to figure out how to make it work. You've got to do the acting yourself, because unless you're lucky enough to watch the videotapes of the actor being recorded, and on most productions you're not going to get access to those tapes, you've got to figure out the acting yourself. And frankly, even if you do get access to the tapes, often they're just not really that helpful. So you've got to work it out, and the best way to do that is to act it out yourself. And of course, when this was animated, I was not born yet, or probably maybe just born. I was born in 1967. I have no idea how Frank Thomas approached it, but my guess is he acted it out at his desk in the Disney studio, and then did thumbnails kind of based on how he acted it out himself. But the tone he's going for, you've always got to identify the emotional beat that's being played out. And the emotional beat here is Baloo is having to tell Mowgli something he really doesn't want to tell him. And remember, Baloo he's a good time guy, you know, he doesn't want to break bad news, so he's going to be so Frank is going to search for physical gestures that betray the emotional state of the bear, which is anxiety, fear, worry. And so he's exploring all these different ideas. So for each thought there's a corresponding expression. Oh gee whiz, how did old Baggy Pants put it? And he's going for this kind of neck rubbing thing where he's kind of rubbing his hand behind his neck, and then rubbing his hand down his cheeks, and then he's going for a kind of scratching thing. He's got various different expressions, all of which add up to physical discomfort. Oh, and here these are his thumbnails, and this is his writing, and I've written in type underneath. This is all taken from The Illusion of Life, which is a book every animator should own and read. Gee whiz, and he's kind of rubbing his head, his arm down the back of his head. Now, and then he's kind of pulling his hand down, and then there's this kind of sigh, and he goes, how did Baggy Pants put it? He said, and then he's exploring other things here, sort of scratching, like he's scratching himself, but he's not really scratching, he hasn't really got an itch, he's just looking for a kind of displacement activity, kind of secondary action, if you like. And then he kind of rubs his mouth here, and then he kind of rubs the back of his neck, and then kind of looks up. He's doing all these little thumbnail sketches, trying to find the right gesture, kind of flicking his nose. Now, not all of these gestures are going to make it into the shot, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but you can see that Frank is exploring this as he goes along, wiping his sweaty palms kind of on his hips. Now this is also from The Illusion of Life. These are the final drawings. So now you can That's him saying, now, how did old Baggy put it? He said, and then he's going to go into, and then he's going to change his mind, and then there's a sort of change of emotion in the next bit of the shot. So let's have a look at the actual animation. Okay, so here's the animation.
Gee whiz. Now, how did old Baggy put it? Mowgli? Now, you wouldn't marry a panther, would you?
He goes into the second bit, which we don't have thumbnails for. So the bit we're concerned with, the bit we have the thumbnails for, is this section, and you can see how closely the final animation drawings match up to Frank Thomas's thumbnails.
Baloo?
Side, scratching his head, rubbing his cheek.
Now, how did old Baggy put it?
And then he's kind of doing this displacement activity. Now, not all of the thumbnails made it in here. He is rubbing the back of his head. This kind of nose flicking gesture didn't make it in. The kind of sweaty palms rubbing didn't make it in. But he did do this gesture up here where he's kind of not scratching his arm. He kind of had him scratching his chest himself instead. But it's kind of the same gesture. It's pretty much the same idea. And leads us into the final animation. So the key takeaway from this video is the importance of doing thumbnails to plan out your animation. And the reason I've recorded all these videos on making thumbnails is because this is one of the toughest things for junior animators to learn, and it is really hard because you have to draw, and for lots of people drawing is hard, and particularly for CG animators who get into the business because they have computer skills rather than drawing skills. But I think it's fair to say that if you can do even crude thumbnail drawings, your work is really going to be so much better because it's a way of planning out your work, which isn't to say you have to be able to thumbnail your work for animation. I mean, to be a great animator, you don't. There are many great CG animators who don't thumbnail. But for me personally, this is an essential part of the process. So I've spent a lot of time studying how great animators thumbnail their work. And thumbnails are, in my view, incredibly important for planning your animation, developing your ideas, figuring out what works and what doesn't, like we saw Frank Thomas do. Not all of his ideas made it into the final shot. Problem solving, and vitally making a roadmap of how you're going to get there. Because once you've done your thumbnails, you've got the line of dialogue, you can time out those thumbnails, you know where each bit of the dialogue is going to match up with a drawing, and there, so you have the timing there, so you can do a pose on stepped curves in Maya and really plan out your work so that before you even start doing poses in Maya, you've already got the shot figured out in your head. And that's the crucial takeaway from this video, is the importance of planning animation like Frank Thomas did it 50 years ago, and how animators still do it today.